Last Sunday, the Newark Star-Ledger ran a report card on Christie in which prominent New Jerseyans were asked to grade the governor's first year in office. There were the predictable A's from Republicans and C's and D's from Democrats. Editorial page editor Tom Moran gave the governor a C, applauding Christie's toughness, but essentially asking, where's the beef? We thought we'd continue the discussion here, and here to offer their views, former Republican State Chairman Tom Wilson, Amanda Woloshen, District Director for Republican Congressman Leonard, Deborah Howlett, President of New Jersey Policy Perspective, and former Communications Director for Democratic Governor John Corzine, and Jerry Harris, Chairman of the New Jersey Black Issues Convention. Thank you all for coming in. And Deborah and Jerry, let me start with you. Can we stipulate that that Christie has changed the atmosphere in Trenton and dominated the political landscape in the state?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's any question that he's changed the political atmosphere, and he has been dominant.
Jerry?
He's very definitely framed the public policy debates in the state.
So, Amanda, what's he done, and how's he done?
He's taken Trenton by storm. I think there's no doubt at all that he's changed the culture in Trenton, and I think everyone has taken notice, whether it be the budget, first time a budget has been passed by the Republican governor with an opposing party in the legislature, or tackling education reform, pension reform, which is coming next year, I'm sure is a priority. But there's very, very little doubt that New Jersey needed this. We're in dire straits. And if something doesn't change, we're going to have a big problem.
Tom, how has he changed the culture in Trenton?
Well, you have, just look around. You have Democrats in the legislature proposing tax cuts for business. You have the NJEA proposing tenure reform. You know, if there aren't two, what planet did we wake up on moments? There you have it. I mean, it's grown-up time in Trenton. The governor came in and said, this isn't pretty, this isn't going to be fun, it's going to be hard work, roll your sleeves up, everybody, and come to the table. And, you know, he's gotten some pluses and minuses from different people for style, but that's all just a bunch of, you know, parlor game for all of us who play this this Trenton game. What matters is the results, and he's brought people to the table, sometimes kicking and screaming, sometimes by force of his personality, but all for the right reasons to achieve, you know, to get us on a different pathway and a different trajectory for New Jersey.
I want to talk about his style at some point, but first let me ask the two of you. Jerry, has he been a good governor?
We did a survey of leadership, and people have said in that survey, leaders across the community, that he has been a good governor in terms of bringing things to the table. He has not been a good governor in the context of bringing all the ideas for solutions to the table. There are, I hear a number of people discussing the notion of you can bring proposals for change and put it on the table as arguments, but the real question is what's the impact? So the quality of life questions, public safety, the ability for us to have a coordinated urban economic development strategy, balanced growth when we talk about revenue and expenditures. Those are the challenges, and quite frankly, I think it might be a bit early to be giving out grades in this very challenging and complex environment, but we do have to make the assessment.
I'm not going to ask you to give grades, but has he been a good governor?
Well, look, he's been a different kind of governor in a lot of different ways, but he's done some of the same things that previous governors did. He balanced the budget by punting on pension, $3 billion worth of pension payments and deferring them. He got rid of property tax rebates. He rated
for another
the clean
another
$1.5 billion. He rated the Clean Energy Fund. And what did he use all this money for? Well, he cut $820 million from education. He gave millionaires and corporations tax breaks. That's a different kind of governor than we've had in the past. I'm not sure it's the right kind of governor, and I'm not sure it deserves an A.
What about the notion that while taking credit for an $11 billion shortfall and closing it, he's done it by using some of the same gimmicks that have been used traditionally in Trenton.
Well, no budget starts at zero, right? And this governor inherited a budget that was full of a lot of holes to start with, starting with $1 billion in stimulus money that was used to prop up an education system that was clearly overfunded, clearly full of some excesses and waste. So when you take somebody else's billion off the table, I'm not sure you get to blame him. His budget actually increased the state dollars that went to education this year. For the pension system, you know, Amanda touched on it.
It was the federal stimulus dollars that he didn't have to
that
work
we didn't
with.
get this
Okay.
year, right? For the pension system that Amanda touched on before, that is clearly on the table for next year. We've dealt with it for new employees. It's now time to deal with it for the existing state workforce. A lot of people think it's a bad idea to throw good money after bad. Clearly, we have a system that is not sustainable. It's not just this governor. It's who's got who's got clear ideas on it. This is inheriting 10, 20 years worth of bad decisions from Republicans and Democrats alike. And the governor's been very honest and open to say, I'm not blaming anybody. It's where we are. It's grown-up time. Let's deal with the problem. And that doesn't mean just funding the same thing over and over and hoping that tomorrow it'll get better.
Let's talk about grown-up time. Grown-up time is screwing up $400 million in race to the top money from the feds when you're losing stimulus money because you don't want to look like you're caving into the unions, which is not my view. That's what his education secretary testified to in a legislative hearing.
Brett Schundler.
Brett Schundler. I think you can say he did all. The bottom line is he took $1 billion away from schools in this state. And the effect, I was reading in the Asbury Park Press this morning, in Brick, they lost $7 million. Their school class sizes went up from 22 students in elementary school to as many as 30 in the middle schools. They had to lay off 90 staff members. They had to cut middle school sports. All of this, all these cuts, all this lost money, and still their property taxes are going up 6%.
The race to the top is a federal issue, and you represent a congressman. How do you respond when you hear a critic say it was a fiasco, we put in a poor application, or we should have coordinated with the union and gotten the money?
I think it was an unfortunate situation. I think everyone will agree to that. But in the end, some people say New Jersey was singled out where we could have maybe worked with them. Others will not. But I think the
singled out because we have a Republican governor?
We have a very strong Republican governor, and that's just not with education. You're hearing it also when it comes to the ARC situation. And that's what we hear a lot in Trenton.
Do you think the Obama administration is coming down harder on Chris Christie because he's the new Republican rock star?
I'm not going to say that. I will say the governor was in Washington about 2 months ago, and the congressman was at a Republican caucus event where the governor spoke, and he was greeted with great applause. That he is considered a governor who is a no-nonsense. He's not a go-along, get-along type of fellow, and in your first year, a governor is judged by his leadership.
Jerry Harris, do you think the Obama administration is trying to cut Christie a bit?
Quite frankly, no. I think the governor is frequently proud of saying that his interest in charter schools and school achievement aligns with the president's position in the direction.
He said yesterday, if you couldn't see us speaking and if you muffled the sounds of our voices, what we say about education reform would sound identical.
Right. So I think what you have realistically is when people have to make difficult decisions about the Obama administration or the Christie administration, you're looking at what's on the table and making situation-by-situation decisions. And the fact that the preferable, I guess, the approach to activity seems to be divide, all right, rather than consensus building. We'll see that over and over again, and that's part of the problem.
Are you saying that Chris Christie's a divisive figure?
In order to get people's attention and to make his point, the start to the conversation, I think he is divisive. I believe he does choose a side of the argument. He's fond of saying, come to the middle of the room. But he will define where the middle of the room and what the line is, and not necessarily invite folks in. I think today's compromise on the arbitration is a kind of an indication that the Democratic legislature and the governor, at least on one issue, have begun to figure out how to do the political reality dance a little bit. But I think the governor coming out of the door was very much a wedge person, and to the extent that there's some issues or the definition of an issue in terms of educational achievement versus saving money in school, where there could have been conversation and commonality developed. That's not happening. We're hoping that'll happen in the future.
I'll take a different take, which is it's not divisive, it's decisive. This is clearly a governor who knows where he comes from, his philosophical approach to this, and it starts first and foremost with your pocketbook, my pocketbook, and every New Jerseyans pocketbook. We simply can't afford a lot of things that other people have said we have to have, we need. We're not down to that. We're down to the true must. On this issue of the race to the top application, again, I think a very different governor. This is a governor who talks about accountability. People need to be held accountable for the decisions they make.
You talking about Brett Schundler? He held Brett Schundler accountable?
He stood up and he said there was a screw-up. There was clearly a screw-up, and the person who I believe is responsible for the screw-up, whose notes on the form that said I'm changing this number represent what was one of the functional issues. We can differ. Deb will have different ideas. Well, if we had done this, that, or the other thing instead, that point wouldn't have mattered. But he held the person accountable and said, we're gonna be accountable, responsible. We're gonna say we made a mistake.
Leadership isn't holding other people accountable. It's taking responsibility yourself.
Well,
a good leader would stand up
being
and
responsible.
Well,
said my administration is
ran
responsible, and the individual in my administration I deem responsible for this action is going to be held accountable for it, and he's going to lose his job. I don't know any other governor who's acted so decisively.
Did was not approved by the governor or the governor's office. So if he's holding people accountable,
it's a 600-page application, and you think the governor has time to sit there and read 600 pages and is responsible for knowing whether or not one number is right or wrong or which number should be put in?
Well, he's
that's the
responsible for
department's
blowing
job.
it up 3 days before the deadline.
That's the job. That's the department's job.
That's $400 million, which in the grand scheme of things is really not that much. I want to ask, you disagree?
When did $400 billion become not very much money?
In a $30 billion situation.
Well, let me give you the decision points the governor made. You said $400 million is not very much. In the first year, the governor, this administration has given $500 million in tax credits, incentive programs, tax breaks to corporations in this state. $500 million that we will no longer see in tax revenues. And that $400 million with the race to the top, there's your $820 million in education funding. But on top of that, he chooses tax credits for corporations over tax credits for low-income people. He cut $45 million from the earned income tax credit, which goes to working poor families, those families who have jobs who are 200% of the poverty level.
Is this an echo of the debate we're having in Washington right now about tax cuts for the rich?
It's sort of this weird echo that goes out, twists around, and comes back in. It's sort of, I haven't figured it out yet.
Deb, it's pretty simple. If we don't have jobs, there'll be a whole lot more poor people in New Jersey. We have unemployment that continues to hold in and around 10%. And if we don't start keeping the jobs we have and doing something about the anti-competitive environment that we have...
Jobs, those construction jobs that the government...
Well, sure, let's just keep throwing public money at creating jobs that will go away at some point. That's not the answer. The answer is to let the private sector create the jobs that need to be created over the long term so that we can... Nobody has said we can do everything. You have to make choices. We're making investments in the future.
Amanda wants to jump in, and you have your hand up as well?
No, I just want to...
Okay, go ahead, Amanda.
With the current state New Jersey is in, we can't be writing blank checks for tunnels. We cannot be allowing companies to leave in droves and residents to leave in droves. Right now, if you look at our tax structure, the top 1% of residents pay a majority of the taxes. I believe it's 40% of taxes come out of the top 1%, and they're not staying in New Jersey. They're leaving to North Carolina.
That's just not true.
It is.
There's an out-migration of New Jersey of about 20,000 people a year. New Jersey, for the third year in a row, 2 studies have shown New Jersey has more millionaires than all but Hawaii and another state that I can't recall.
Let me shift
that the fact that people are moving out of New Jersey because the top tax rate is the same as it is in New York State is wrong.
Let me shift the discussion a second.